Lilian Calderon Jimenez was just 3 years old when her parents illegally brought her to the U.S. from Guatemala seeking asylum. 27 years later, she was on the verge of getting permanent resident status. She and her high school sweetheart were married and had a 4-year-old daughter, 22-month-old son, when she was arrested, taken from them, U.S. citizens all, by the way, and held for nearly a month. Lilian had just finished meeting with immigration officials in Providence this past January. Her interview had gone well when she was taken into custody. Her lawyer fought for her release for weeks, and then just days before her hearing, Lilian was temporarily let go without explanation. U.S. District Court Judge Mark Wolf has since questioned why she was detained in the first place, noting it was, quote, part of a pattern. Overall, as you probably know, Boston area ICE arrests are up 50%, according to federal data gathered by the Globe's Akilah Johnson. I'm joined now by Lilian Calderon. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet
Her
you.
husband, Luis Gordillo. Good to meet you, too. And their attorney, Adriana Lafaille, a lawyer for ACLU of Massachusetts. Lafaille, good to meet you. Thank you all. Can I start with you? Routine visit. You're told that you provided the documentation to prove that your marriage was legit. When you're told, with no notice, you're not going home. What were your first thoughts, Lilian, when you heard those words?
I mean, I automatically fear. I was completely blindsided. I didn't expect to not go home. You know, they wouldn't even let me say goodbye to my husband. Or
Did you ask to talk to
I
Luis?
did.
And they said you can't?
They said I couldn't.
Did they give you any explanation?
No, they just said I was being detained while everything was being processed.
And how did you feel? I can't even imagine what that moment is like when I assume you feel helpless, powerless.
Very. You know, you feel helpless. They handcuff you, and then they handcuff you. You're in a government building, and they still handcuff you and exit you through the back of the building, so I wouldn't see my husband or say goodbye to him.
You know, I should have said at the beginning, and I'm sorry I didn't. When you were brought here at 3 years old by your family, your father was a cop in Guatemala, is that correct? Explain quickly to people, why did he decide it was time to bring the family here?
So my dad was seeking political asylum because at the time in Guatemala, a few years earlier, he had detained some men that were accused. They were tried for rape, and they were found guilty. They served their sentence, they were released, and that's when my dad started receiving death threats for him and the family.
So you can't talk to your wife. My understanding from reading the Globe is some ICE agents come out to you, say the words, "You're all set," whatever that means.
Yes.
Hand you the photos she had brought and other documents to prove the marriage. What's going through your head?
At the moment, I asked them, what did they mean? Where was my wife? And they told me that she was being detained. I asked them, can I see her? And they also told me no, we couldn't see each other, and she was being detained.
You know, I know your kids are young, and, you know, young. I had them, too, at one point. What did they say when their mother didn't come home that night? What do they ask? What do you say to them?
Our daughter, which is the oldest, she asked where her mommy was. I didn't know what to say other than
what did you say?
That she was working. And that's all I kept saying the whole time she was gone.
When she didn't come home the next day, and the next day they're still asking for their mom?
And then not really a few days later, she asked me how come her friends had a mommy and she didn't have a mommy.
You know, Adriana, I mentioned at the beginning that Judge Wolf said that he demanded, not said, that he wanted an explanation because ICE hadn't given one. Did he ever get it? I mean, what is the explanation for, we've all heard that horrible term, bad hombres. Obviously, this is a good one. Did he ever get an explanation from ICE as to why she, like so many others, have been detained in these circumstances?
There was none that I saw, and really, how could there be an explanation, right? What we're seeing is really the last shreds of humanity being stripped from the immigration system, and detentions and removals that are just completely arbitrary and inhumane.
Well, I'm entitled to one stupid question per interview, so here is it. Why are they doing this? What is this, just to build up the numbers, and people like Lilian are the low-hanging fruit, so it's easy to build up the numbers with people like her? They're available, they voluntarily come in to comply with whatever rules there are. Is that what it's about?
I think, unfortunately, I think that is what it's about, and the consequence of that is, you know, harming families that are integral to our community, harming children and communities around us.
You know, we should also say for the people, you're obviously an immigration expert. When you marry a U.S. citizen, and it's a legit relationship, as I said, from high school sweethearts, that's usually a path to permanent resident status. This is not some radical thing that Lilian is seeking. It's the norm, is it not? Or was the norm, at least, in the past, yes?
Yes, and in Lilian's case specifically, there were regulations created in 2016 that set out a path for someone like Lilian who had an old order of removal from her family's asylum case when she was a kid, to follow a series of steps and gain her lawful residency here through her husband.
You ever broken any laws? I mean, I know you came here legally. 3, it wasn't your decision. Have you ever broken any laws, done anything horrible, or
No.
ever treat him bad?
No.
So, you know, I don't want to leave the impression that things are fixed, because you're released. You were in there for a month, for the most part, from what I understand, having no idea what was going on or what was going to happen. You have a court date, I think, on May 7th.
Yes.
Is that right? Are you scared?
Yes, actually. I mean, I know Adriana says that we have a 90-day stay of removal, which means I can't be removed.
For 90 days.
For 90 days, but there's uncertainty what happens after the 90 days, because immigration is a long process, you know, and sometimes things don't get fixed in 90 days.
And have you given any guidance at all as to what's likely, I mean, other than by your representative, what's likely to happen, what your future holds? I mean, as far as you're just as likely to be sent back to a country that you have no recollection of, I assume. And
right. Then
are you scared?
Of course. 'Cause I don't want my family to be separated. That's another country that we don't know.
What would you do if, in the worst case, if Lilian was sent, I was going to say back. Back is not even fair. She barely knows the country. Sent away to Guatemala. What would you do with your kids?
I don't know.
And they're citizens?
Yes.
You're a citizen?
Luis isn't even Guatemalan. So, you know.
You applied for Dreamer protection, too.
I did.
Why'd you not get that?
Unfortunately.
Well, you can, okay.
Let me address that. So to qualify under DACA, you have to show that you've been here continuously since 2007. And of course, Lilian had been here continuously, right, since much earlier than that, since she was 3 years old. But the agency required her to prove that by providing evidence from 2007 and 2008 and 2009 and so forth every single year. And, you know, they ultimately decided that the evidence from each of the, you know, from all the years in between was not satisfactory. Now,
is that an appeal, I hope? Or?
Well, there's no appeal process. They've been asked to revisit the decision,
okay.
and I certainly hope they will, because she is, of course,
and I should be clear, when I said
DACA.
earlier, when Judge Wolf said this is part of a pattern, I didn't clarify that. There are a lot, we had Francisco Rodriguez here, who has been in the newspapers too, who has built a whole life and a career not unlike you, goes for a normal visit, complying with all the rules, is grabbed. They're not aberrational. There are a lot of people in this region of the country, the Boston area, whatever it's called, similarly situated, are they not?
Yeah, including a number of other people detained at their marriage interviews like Lilian was.
How do you feel about, I was going to say, this is your country. I mean, this is your country. 27 or 30 years. How do you feel about your country right now after its leadership is attempting to rip you apart from this man and your 2 little children?
I mean, I feel that we live in a great country that we can kind of fight back, you know, show who we are. We're not just criminals or, you know, drug dealers or whatever our president says we are. We are families. We are wives. We're mothers. You know, we're trying to do the best for our kids, for the next generation of citizens. So I think I feel like the great part about this country is we can show who we are and show that, you know, we're also part of this country. We're trying to do what's best. So, I mean, I'm not angry, I'm not upset, I just feel like if we all kind of tell our stories and show people who we are, they'll see the other side of the coin.
Well, you're not angry, you're not upset. I'm angry and I'm upset, and I'm so glad to meet you. And wish you luck to you, Luis, and your children. Good luck, and Adriana, good luck to you as well. Thank you all for spending time with us.